So good morning and welcome on this blisteringly warm day of 21 degrees. It was colder yesterday. I think it was 9 degrees yesterday, so it's a heat wave. Let's begin by taking refuge. And you'll find that on the sheets. And we'll say it in English 3 times. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So today's talk was to be about Ngondro, and I will discuss Ngondro. But I also, as I was thinking about this, thought that it would be important to contextualize, to put it within the whole framework of practice rather than isolating Ngondro. You can only, I think, understand Ngondro unless you know what the basic outline for practice is. This is also sort of, I hate to use this word, but we're all here sort of like guinea pigs because I have to give this talk twice more. And so I'm going to be refining it each time I give it. So you're the first to hear it. Later on, I have to give it at KTD, for KTD. So what I thought we would do is spend a few moments contemplating. By the way, everyone should have one of these. Does everyone have one? And if you don't, I've got a couple extra here, if you want to come and get them. Excellent. And I think we're good. And so I want to turn us, go ahead and keep me. Turn us for our contemplation to the 4 thoughts. We're going to start there. They don't need a lot of explanation. However, they are 1/2 actually of the Ngondro text. Every person who practices Ngondro begins with these 4 thoughts. They are very simple, but enormously profound. And I think if you begin to understand these, you'll begin to understand what Ngondro is all about. So how do we contemplate these thoughts? Well, first of all, we read them. We then sort of turn them over in our mind, see how they hit our heart, and then make a resolution based upon our contemplation of these thoughts. There are 4 of them. As I said, they are simple. They're simple truths of life, but things that we oftentimes forget. So let's look at the first thought. The first thought is a precious human birth. By the way, this is in language that is somewhat stilted. It's based upon Tibetan translation. But I think you can understand what's being said, even though there is that slight rigidity, you might say. So, the first thought is a precious human birth, favorable to practice, is hard to obtain and easily lost. So the idea here is that you are to turn over in your mind the fact that my life is precious. I woke up this morning. I mean, that's sort of a miracle, especially when you're 76 years old, whatever age you are, just to wake up. That also this preciousness has to do with the fact that you have everything necessary to go from the confusion you currently have to clarity, to enlightenment. You have that because you have this precious life. And so let's just think for a moment about, how do I consider my life precious? And then as a result of that contemplation, we make the resolution that I got to make this life meaningful. And what does that mean? What is it that would be meaningful? What would be meaningful would be to go from our current state of ignorance, our current state of confusion, to one where we were clear that we saw things as they really were, unstained by all of our confusion, by all of our emotional upsets, our anger, our frustration, that would be meaningful. So let's resolve, as a result of our knowing that we have everything we need to go from being confused to having clarity, knowing that, let's resolve to make our lives meaningful by beginning that journey from confusion to clarity. The next thought is, the world and all of its inhabitants are impermanent. In particular, the life of each being is like a water bubble. It is uncertain when I will die and become a corpse. At that time, only the Dharma can help. What's that mean? Well, it's pretty clear, isn't it? We are on this earth for only a short period of time. Even someone as old as I am, looking at my life, it's like gone like that. It's over. It's impermanent. We sort of have that idea sometimes, we sort of know that sometimes, but we act like it's not pertinent to our life. They say that the journey, the spiritual journey we are on, begins when we recognize our own mortality. And until we do, we're just playing games. So the other thing to recognize too is, not only are we impermanent and could, and will die, but we could pass away at any moment. I could go out here today and be run over in traffic. That's how precarious our lives are. Simple thought, but profound in its implications for our life. So, not only should I search for and be on the path to go from confusion to clarity, I should do it with diligence because I don't have a lot of time. So that's the second thought. So let's just take a moment to think about that. So the third thought is, when death comes, there is no freedom, and karma takes its course. Since I create my own karma, I should abandon all unwholesome actions and devote my time to wholesome actions. They say that if you want to know what you will be tomorrow or next week or next year, look at where you are right now. If you want to know who you are now, look at what you've done in the past. This is where you're at. So we create our own experience. But this does not mean that karma is destiny, because at any time we can choose to go from ignorance and confusion to clarity. We can take that path. So with that in mind, we observe our mind stream every day. The most important practice you and I can engage in is that every day we look at where our mind's at. Just stop. Where's my mind been today? Might surprise you to think about that. You know, you've maybe had a day where you've been really angry, frustrated, and so forth, resentful or whatever. And you're sort of in it, not above it, not observing it, just in it. Once in a while, it is good as a practice we could all do. It's nothing complicated. Just stop and look at where our minds are at. So with this in mind, I observe my mind stream every day. Again, these are the thoughts people who are doing Ngondro contemplate each day. The final thought, just like the last meal before the executioner leads me to my death, home, friends, pleasures, and possessions I have cause me continual torment by means of the three sufferings. What does that mean? That means at the time of death, you're not going to take your friends with you. They're going to be on this side. You're going to the other side. You certainly will not take all your money with you. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a grandmother, bless her heart. She lived during the Depression and didn't trust banks. So she always kept her money, which was a considerable amount, in her purse. And I can remember, she was an Irish lady, beautiful person. But anyway, she would open up that purse to me every once in a while and say, "Tommy, you know, I'm not going to be able to take this with me." But I think she thought she was because she kept it in that purse. The more serious point is, we're not going to take anything with us other than the imprints of our good and bad behavior. That we will carry with us. Nothing else. I have been working in hospice for a while, and I had the extreme pleasure, or not pleasure, I guess, privilege, of being with people at the time of their death. And you really come to understand that fact that there is nothing they will carry with them. They won't carry their personality. That's gone. It's over. When I die, Tom Broadwater is gone. He is no more. My personality is over. All that I carry forward is what I've done. And it says, all these other things that I hold on to, these homes, these friends, these pleasures and possessions, they cause me pain. Well, how's that? And it says, by means of the three sufferings. Well, the first suffering is just the regular pain we all suffer, right? I mean, you get sick, you stub your toe, whatever, that's pain. That's suffering. There is a second kind of suffering, the suffering of change. It's this way one day, and daggone it, it's different the next day. Or it may be more dramatic. One day I have this job, and the next day I don't. Or it may be more dramatic in the sense of, I have my spouse or my partner this day, but tomorrow I don't. And that causes us suffering. And then there's the third suffering. It's a little harder to get at, and this is the suffering called pervasive suffering, all-pervasive suffering. And that means even when we're really happy, there's a part of us saying, oh, this is going to end. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm on this Caribbean cruise. Ah, what fun. But it's going to end. So even in our happiest moments, there is this suffering that is going to end. And that's our existence as it is now. So what our resolution here is, I must cut through all attachment and strive to attain enlightenment. What we do in meditation is to develop a degree of clarity that sees these things. And to the extent we understand their nature, we are not overwhelmed by whatever comes our way. I'm not there yet. Things still bother me. But you get the point. The point is that at some time or another, we can start to see these events in our lives as just waves coming up and down. And we don't have to react or overreact to them. So those are the four thoughts. And what I propose to you today is, this is the beginning of practice. This is where you start. Very simple facts, but really putting them in your mind stream. And then, more importantly, resolving as a result of that to practice. So let's go now to a short format for daily practice. And to begin with, for all of us, it is meditation. By the way, this weekend has been a powerhouse of meditation. It's been wonderful. Yesterday we had 3.5 hours of practice. It was really cool. The idea of all of us being together and supporting one another in our practice and meditating was like beyond, it was really cool. So anyway, to make a long story short, we begin with meditation. And so we have these meditation sessions. This is our practice. And in order to do this practice, we have to have a proper motivation and intention. I don't know about you, but when I sometimes sit down to practice meditation, I don't clearly state my intention. I just sort of sit down and then sort of run off into reverie. And I label that as meditation. It ain't meditation. Meditation begins with intentionality. I intend, I sit down, and what I am going to do for right now, nothing else, I'm going to meditate. So establishing your motivation and intention is very important. The next thing I talk about, and this is, you get this, is our classes. We have 8 classes where this is taught, so I'm just going over what's already being taught. You can have a little shrine in your house, a sacred space that's your own, and I recommend that as part of your practice, that you have a sacred space where you put pictures of the Buddha, people that inspire you. And on that shrine, you can put flowers, you can put cookies, you can put water, make a water offering. Why do you do that? You're recognizing these beings that are pictured in front of you deserve honor. And you're offering. They don't need anything. I mean, they're accomplished beings. Why would they need? You need to show your respect to them. That's why you're doing that. That's what all these offerings up here are about. None of these beings or statues that are represented here need anything. But we make the offering because we need to show our generosity, our love. Then what we do next is perform prostrations to the objects on our shrine. It's really difficult for us Westerners to do that sometimes, to make prostrations, but it is the most profound way to show respect. And so we make prostrations. And the suggestion is we do 3 prostrations towards our shrine. Then we recite the refuge prayer. Why? You know, we say the refuge prayer, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then we immediately get up and take refuge in something else. My job, my wealth, my health, my blah, blah, blah. So taking refuge every time we practice is a reminder of all the times that we haven't, and putting our focus on that. I have been to many pujas where 20, 30 minutes is spent in doing nothing than reciting the refuge vow over and over and over again. We have such a habit of taking refuge in so many other things. It's really good to put our attention on our refuge, our true refuges, our safe refuges, our wealth, our family, our friends. They're not going to be with us on the other side. They're not going to be able to help us. The only reliable source of help is the Buddha, his teachings, and those that, as a result of his teachings, have become awakened. So we say the refuge prayer. Then we contemplate the 4 thoughts as we have just done. Then we do our practice. So we don't just jump in, it's a bit of a ritual here, but it's basically to slow down before you actually do your practice. And then finally, not finally, but the next thing you do is the 4 immeasurables. And we'll go over those at the very end of this session. And then finally, we dedicate the merit of our practice for the benefit of all beings. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So that's an individual practice. That's where all of us have begun. And it's a simple way to begin practice. Now let's go to the page, and I don't have this in order, it's called The Summary of Some of the Practices on the Kaju Path. And I emphasize some because there are many, many practices. And looking at the bottom, it says, this listing is suggestive and not meant to be exhaustive. Teachers can and do instruct others on other practices. Also, this list of practices should not be viewed in a rigid serial manner. So you might jump around a bit. But for all of us, we begin with sitting meditation. It is the foundation of our practice. It's foundational. And it develops and grows as we go along. And basically what it is we have been governed by our thoughts for so long. We have been led by our thoughts for so long, we can't see clearly. And so what we do in meditation is starting to recognize our thoughts and letting them go. That there is nothing substantial or necessarily real about our thoughts. And in that gap between thoughts, we can actually begin to see things as they really are. And that's the point of meditation, to be able to see things as they really are. Not this blah, 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 blah. We do this all the day, all time. And that sometimes disguises the truth of reality. So we begin with meditation. Some of us take the ritual of refuge, and that's a next step. Basically, we decide that for all the things that we could take refuge in, our most reliable is the Buddha. And that's, we make that ritual, we take that ritual step. After that, we begin our practice, and it's in the practices I've just described. So that's it. The problem here is with if we just stop here, and we often do, if we just stop here at meditation, we're liable to become very self-satisfied. I am taking care of me. I'm doing okay. I'm meditating. I'm getting a mind that's quiet. That's sort of being self-satisfied. So the next step is compassion and love. That's the next step. We call it the Mahayana vehicle, the greater vehicle. First of all, we have to have a foundation, obviously, so we do meditate, but there are steps beyond that. And one of the steps we can begin to practice is the compassion practice of Tonglen. Basically, in an imaginary way, we imagine all the suffering of beings. We take it in, sort of, you might say, digest it. And we give out to all beings our love and compassion. And there's a book, some of you are quite aware of it, it's called The Great Path of Awakening. You don't have to have gone through this book to practice Tonglen, but it helps. And generally, you don't want to do that by yourself. You generally want to do that with another practiced individual, either a Lama or a senior meditation instructor. But it better explains how we go beyond self-satisfaction to concern and love for other beings. And then we're introduced to the idea of ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. ultimate bodhicitta is basically to be able to see things as they really are. And relative bodhicitta is all about developing our love and compassion for other beings. And there's a strange alchemy, you might say, between these two, because if I start to show my concern and love for other beings and less concerned about my own ego grasping, the world opens up to us. The larger world. The world not simply based upon my little stinky ego. So that's the next practice we can involve ourselves. And then we can go to an additional level, and that's the Vajrayana practice. And we can do Chinrezig, we can do Green Tara, we can do Medicine Buddha, only to name a few. And what happens or can happen when we do these practices, another world opens up to us. A world, a pure world. A world that at this point we can only imagine, but represents more clearly what reality is and what we think. So we may think of Chinrezig. And it's been explained to me that Chinrezig is more, basically Chinrezig represents all infinite love and compassion of all the Buddhas. We may think that that's external to us, but Chinrezig represents us more than what we think we are. We truly do have this heart of love and compassion. But right now we visualize it externally. But these practices of the Vajrayana open us up to our greater heart, a greater universe, you might say. I have to note that, for example, today, Green Tower was done, I think, at 8:30. Not too many people come to that. There's one back there. There's a Green Tower practitioner back there. So I would recommend once in a while to go to one of those practices to see if there's any fit for you. One of the great Lamas who came to the West said that Chinrezig is one of the best practices for us as Westerners to be involved in. So I certainly recommend that you once in a while visit Chinrezig and the practice. Now then, we go on to what are called Ngondro. This is the subject I told you I was going to talk about today. But it's only seen within this context. You really can't do Ngondro until you've done some practice. You really can't do Ngondro until you've developed some compassion and love. So it's down the road a bit. Right now there are 25 people in this center doing Ngondro. And you're welcome to consider that for yourself at some point. What's the point of Ngondro? Well, I said they are Mahamudra preliminaries. Mahamudra practice is a meditation practice that is very, very profound. So it is that when you do meditation, shamatha, what's going on there? At its best, or its result, I should say. The result of meditation is you're going to be resting, relaxed within your own mind, and experiencing that mind as being relaxed. Some people even describe meditation as being relaxed, and it is. It also has an aspect of being alert, too. You can't get too relaxed, you fall asleep, right? So it's being relaxed, but also alert. Mahamudra goes one step further. It says, basically, the path is once I have been able to rest in my own mind, I have become familiar with my own mind such that I've made friends with it and I can sit with it. Mahamudra takes us to the next step, which is, what is this mind? And you look at your mind that's resting. We won't talk too much about that because that's really a profound practice. But the idea here is that the result is I look at my mind. And what is our mind? We've said our minds are like Chenrezig. Our minds are Buddha nature. And so through the Mahamudra meditation, we begin to get some sense of the vastness of our own mind, the beauty of our own mind, the emptiness of our own mind, all those things. Most of us, me, I think, may at different times have concordant experiences of what this Mahamudra is. We have concordant, if you see a beautiful sunset, say, you may have some sort of blissful experience that's concordant with Mahamudra. So I'm just sort of pointing the direction of what we're talking about. But what we say in our lineage is that to have a sustained realization of that experience, that Mahamudra experience, in order to get to that point, you go through the preliminaries, the Ngondro preliminaries. So that's sort of how this all sort of fits in. So let's next go to the 4 unique practices of Ngondro. By the way, this is not, Ngondro's not an easy practice. In each one of these 4, there is something that we go over 111,111 times. That's a lot. So, for example, in Refuge and Bodhicitta, the person doing Ngondro prostrates to an image such as this, and I'll explain this. By the way, this is our family portrait. This is all the beings who have, in our lineage, that have become enlightened as a result of the Buddha's teaching. All the greats, you might say. So this is our family lineage portrait. So we bow, we prostrate to them, full prostrations, and we do that 111,111 times. Why that number? I don't know. It's an arbitrary number figured out by people that know more than I do. So that's what we do. And what happens or can happen as a result of doing the practice? By the way, you could do that practice and still not gain anything from it if you don't intend. If your intention, if your heart's not in it, you're just doing empty ritual. No point to that. It's something in your heart that you really understand that these beings did reach awakening. And as I think I said before, we don't, as Westerners, we don't like doing those kind of things, getting down on our hands and knees and acting from our standpoint subservient. But it is the most profound way we show surrender. I mean, you and I have had our ways of dealing with stuff, our strategies and so forth. But in Ngondro, we surrender all that. We say, all the strategies I've used have been sort of futile. I admit that, and I go to refuge, to a true refuge, to those that actually have reached awakening. The next practice is called Vajrasattva practice. Basically, there's a mantra we say, a purification mantra we say, again, 111,11 times. And so we say that mantra while visualizing a meditational deity, Vajrasattva, above us, and that streaming from him into our body is a liquid that purifies all of our deficiencies. It's using our imagination to purify. You and I have all done things that need forgiven and overcome. The person who most resists forgiveness for our deficiencies is ourselves. So in Vajrasattva, you might say we're learning to forgive ourselves, letting go, and recognizing the pure nature that is within us, that we really do have this. And that these things that obscure that have no reality. And so this is the process of purification. Beautiful practice. Again, however, if you simply see it in a ritualistic way, as opposed to a practice in which I am transforming my mind, if I don't have that appreciation, if I don't allow that to happen, it's just an empty practice. So again, it becomes profound to the extent you take it to heart and know what's really happening. Then there's another practice called mandala practice. You've probably seen, particularly Tibetans and people around here, this is a mudra that's involved in the mandala practice. And so you take your two thumbs and grab your two pinkies, you put your ring finger up in the middle, and then you grab your two other fingers. And that represents the universe, everything. Mount Meru, which is this huge mountain, is right in the middle of this universe. And you offer it up to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the 10 directions, all the enlightened beings, and you say, whatever there is in this universe, I offer to you. I give it up. It's yours. It's a beautiful practice of letting go. They say that if we could let go right now, let go of everything, just let go, we would wake up. So we're practicing, using a mudra and some words. We're offering up everything, both good and bad. And the final practice is Guru Yoga. And Here's what Mingyur Rinpoche says about this. The foundational practices are a path to self-discovery. They help us to recognize the diamond, the Buddha nature that we have been all along. The possibilities introduced by Ngondro are so vast and so profound that if you tried to comprehend the whole of it, it would be overwhelming, he says. And so, for this reason, it's important to remember that Ngondro works step by step. So, we in Guru Yoga are uniting our mind with the Guru's mind, the teacher's mind. There's different ways of looking at the teacher, the Guru. You could think of the Guru as the Buddha. You could think of the Buddha as his teachings. You could think of the Buddha as, the Guru as the human teacher. There's different gradations of that, you know? I mean, there are realized teachers in this world. Many people say Tai Situ is a realized being. And so we would unite our mind with Tai Situ, the Karmapa, the Buddha, blend our mind with theirs, and come to appreciate the fact that their mind, their enlightened mind, is no different than mine. In fact, it is inseparable. And that's what we working towards in Ngondro, uniting our mind with the enlightened beings. Now, you have other kinds of teachers, such as myself. I'm a low order, and there are higher order teachers. I consider myself as a teacher more of a friend to help folks. And I'm no longer their teacher when they can go one step beyond me. If I can keep one step ahead of the students, I'm their teacher. And as soon as that's no longer possible, then I'll send them on to greater teachers. So that's a teacher. I'm sort of getting off the subject, but it is still on the subject. So another teacher would be the world itself, the world of appearances. That's our teacher. And in this special way, everything is impermanent. And that teaches us something. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. So the world's our teacher. And at some point, if we get good at this, we start to recognize our own mind as the teacher. And that's also what Ngondro is working on with us, to recognize my mind is no different than the Buddha's mind. In small print here, he worked a lot harder at it than we did, and probably for lifetimes. Our mind's the same as Milarepa's mind. Again, a little bit more diligent than us. But nonetheless, our mind is no different from that of the enlightened beings. They simply have recognized it, and through Ngondro, we're going to start to uncover that, see that. That's the practice. The practice is to start to be able to see our mind, not only in concordant experiences of, a beautiful sunset or a moment of bliss, but really as we move about in the world. We were talking today in our Ngondro class. Milarepa, a great saint of Tibetan lore, continuously, all the time, recognized the nature of his own mind, that it was Buddha nature. He lived that. So, but for us, it's often just concordant experiences. But trust me, you have had them. And you should trust yourself to know that you've had them. Just not very long, and not on a sustained level. But this is what we're working towards in our practice here. So I have not described in great detail Ngondro. I've tried to give it in such a way that everybody can understand a little bit about it. And if you want to know more about it and are interested, I would be more than happy to talk to you about it. But I do want you to understand the basics of it. So we have a few minutes, and I'll open it up to questions. I could not have been that clear. Good morning.
Good morning. In the list of the practices, it said after Ngondro, sometimes people would be given a lifelong mantra practice.
That's correct.
Can you describe maybe like what that would look like?
Well, yesterday, as a matter of fact, there were a couple of students from the center who received the instructions on how to do what's called karma pachi, which is a lifelong practice. I think there were 2 or 3 people that did that. So it may be that. It could be another meditational deity. So it depends a lot upon the teacher and the student. So, but the one that Lama Kathy, I should say, sort of like prescribed was Karma Pachi, who is one of the Karmapas. There's a sadhana around that.
And one other question, is there anybody who really takes on like Tonglen as like a lifelong practice?
There probably are.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone.
Okay.
One of the things, though, I do think is, it really depends on the individual, because there are some folks that really get this quickly about how to do Tonglen, and no problem. At least this is what I found as a teacher. They get it and do it, and there's no problem. There are other folks that really struggle. I mean, really struggle with Tonglen. And so it depends on the individual as to what you might, for someone who's struggling with it, that might be their practice for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All these things are very individual, based upon what the student needs, and also what the student seems to have a propensity towards. You know, if you really liked, and there are folks in this center whose practice is Chenrezig, and that will be their practice from now on. That's what they've said. And there are people that Green Tara is their practice, and it will be their practice from now on. So it depends on the individual and their propensities, what they like. I mean, you can't discount that. I mean, there's a reason for your appreciating Chenrezig, among other practices. Now you have to be careful, it's not just what you like. You know, I like this, but I don't like that. Sometimes it's important that you practice a practice based upon your need to practice that. So it's like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Lama Tom, for your teaching.
Kevin is joining the Ngondro group here, so he was here for the first time, so yay.
Thank you. And one comment about the Tonglen. I kind of lump metta into it because it feels like it's half of Tonglen. It's the giving part without the receiving. But the reason.
You have to speak a little louder because I'm hot.
So Lama, excuse me, thank you. I wanted to do a quick sidebar on the question about Tonglen.
Okay.
And metta. Now I may mistakenly lump metta into that because metta is the giving part minus the receiving. But when we do the COSI for adults once a year, the researcher that has worked with Lama Kathy suggests that the brain really benefits from that practice. So there is, I don't know how it relates to the Buddhism side of things, but from a science standpoint, there's definitely a benefit to that.
Yes.
Then my question is, you mentioned
And if scientists say it, it's got to be so.
Until it says it isn't. You mentioned a full prostration.
Yes.
Can you describe that, please?
I'll just do it. So normally when we come into the shrine room, and I'll go on sideways so that you can see. It's touching the top of our head, our throat, and our heart center. We do that, and we do that in reverence to a recognition of the sacred objects here in the shrine room. Particularly the lotus thousand. Anyway, so we do that, and we just go down on all fours like this and touch our head to the floor. In a full prostration, what we would do, and Kevin, this is what we would be doing, is touching like this and going down and going like that. So it's a full body, you might say. We'll be talking about that. And again, the profound nature of that is you're lowering yourself completely in surrender. Sort of cool. Yes. Oh, yes. Next. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Or afternoon, yes, you're right.
On the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma,
Yes.
number 3, when death comes, there is no freedom, and karma takes its course. My understanding is that karma is always taking its course.
I didn't hear you.
Number 3 of the four thoughts
Yes.
says, when death comes, there is no freedom,
Yes.
and karma takes its course.
Yes.
My understanding is that karma is always taking its course, whether we're dead or alive.
Yeah, that's true. But what is meant there is, there's a finality to that. Whatever you have done up to that point, there's nothing more you can do.
Oh.
Karma will take its course. If your life has been spent in anger, you're going to wind up in a hell realm no matter what. If you don't have to believe that. That's okay. Some people do, some people. I do believe that. But even if you don't believe that, you know that your anger creates immeasurable suffering for yourself and for other beings. And if I am angry habitually, my life is a hell realm. It's just that way. So I personally believe that at the time of death, the only thing we're going to carry in to our next life is the karma we have already formed in this life and in previous lives, and how we manifest in the next life is going to be very much characterized by our karma. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you for your talk, Lama Tom. I did want to ask you one question about that to see if I was thinking about it the right way, relative to what you just said at death and onto your next life. But if I think about it the right way, you know, there is no Lama Tom Broadwater, there is no Steve Thaxton, so stated provocatively, that karma is really for that next guy to worry about, right? It's not really about me. And so, right. So I tend to think of it, right, like, that, I mean, that's really the key of compassion, right? Like, I need to generate positive karma, compassionate for whatever it is in that next life that inherits that karmic momentum, right?
Yeah. On the other hand, you have enlightened beings who tell you that they can recount previous lifetimes. So there is a stream of consciousness that does continue. But because of our confusion and the craziness that normally occurs in the bardo, we're not going to remember that this was us. But what I'm saying is this personality, you as you, is over. And the only thing that's going to continue is your karma. But there is this stream of consciousness that will continue. And I would be worried about that myself. I don't know about you.
And to be clear, I stated that way to illustrate the concept I was trying to say.
Yeah, I'm worried about that myself.
Yeah. Whether it's me or somebody else, I think we should all be worried about it, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Excellent. We've gone over a few minutes here. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm on this side and I'm watching you all and I see that people paid attention and I thank you so much. That's very much appreciated. What I'd like to do is to wind up. They're very simple but very profound prayer, and it's called the Four Measurables. So often in our daily life, we think of other people as obstacles. We have feelings of resentment, anger, jealousy, what have you, towards them. And this prayer sort of clears the slate and points your intention to their well-being. It's a beautiful prayer. In the foundational vehicle, the Hinayana, it is called the Brahma Viharas. I believe that's what they're called. The abode of the gods. The idea being that if we have these kinds of attitudes, it's sort of like divine. It's really beautiful. So let's say the four measurables to conclude, beginning with may all beings. And we'll say them 3 times. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be disassociated from the supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May they remain in the boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and the rejection of others. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be disassociated from the supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May they remain in the boundless equanimity, free from both and rejection of others. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be disassociated from the supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May they remain in a boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. So, as in all practice, we don't just jump up like our hair is on fire and run out the door. We just take a second to relax. Just relax for just a moment. And then finally, as we do in all practice, we dedicate the merits. See, we could get really self-satisfied about our being here today. Gee whiz, I came out in the cold weather, I trudged through the snow, I did all kinds of good things being here, You could do that and lose all the merit. So instead, whatever little tiny bit of merit we gain through being here today, we offer it up. We give it. Let go of it. Give it for the benefit of all beings. So, by the merit of this activity of this morning, may we attain awakening for ourselves and for all beings, without exception. And by this same practice of our coming here, our thinking about the Dharma, meditating and contemplating, may we overcome our faults, our laziness, our jealousy, our greed, whatever it may be. And we're going to do that through our practice. We're going to work on those things, our deficiencies. So from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. And you're included in that. May we free all beings. Thank you so much, and have a good week.